I found my wife's earring in my brother's car, but the truth was even worse. I borrowed Mark's truck to pick up my son from soccer. It was a bright day and the sun cut across the leather seat when I opened the door. A tiny flash caught my eye. I reached down and found a single gold earring wedged between the seat and the center console. I held it by the hook and felt my stomach drop. I bought that exact earring for Laura last year. I remember the smile on her face when she opened the velvet box at our kitchen table. I remembered how she put it on then, and how she kissed my cheek like it mattered. Now that small gold circle warmed my palm and turned my head cold. I sat back on the tailgate with the engine humming and held the earring like a small, absurd piece of proof. I tried to tell myself 1,000 things. Maybe she lost one at some store. Maybe Mark had found it and put it there. Maybe I was seeing a pattern that wasn't true. But the image kept coming. Mark's truck, his long hands, his easy laugh. I had always trusted my brother. We shared tools, jokes, and beers. Borrowing his truck was something I always did when my old pickup was stubborn. Today, the truck felt foreign. I checked my watch and felt the minutes pull thin. I had to pick Ben up in 8 minutes. My fingers tightened around the earring. I slid it into my pocket like a stolen thing and walked to school. I barely noticed the boys running and shouting. All I could think was that the small gold loop had opened a door I never wanted to find. I kept the earring out of sight. I pulled my phone from my pocket and typed a text. I tried to keep my voice steady even in print. You missing an earring? If you like this kind of raw true revenge story, hit subscribe for more. I sent the text standing by the chain link fence while Ben kicked his shoe into the dirt. The message felt too small for what I'd found, but I want to keep things casual. Laura replied almost immediately. Nope, both right here. She typed with her usual smile and letters. Her reply came with a heart emoji. My hands trembled. I read her message again and looked at Ben's muddy sneakers, as if they might tell me something. I wanted to believe her. I did believe her more than anything else in the world. Still, the earring sat heavy in my pocket, like a secret that would not hush. Later that night, after Ben was asleep and the house smelled like a shampoo and laundry, I walked into our bedroom. The lamp glowed low and Laura was at the dresser, humming to herself. She hummed the way she always hummed when she was content, soft and small. I opened the top drawer of her jewelry box as if I had every right. One side of the box was orderly, studs, chains, a neat row of watches. The other side, where the gold earring should have been, was oddly empty. I stared at the hollow velvet and felt a thread in my chest snap. Everything okay? She asked behind me, voice the same warm slant it always had. I told her I was fine. I lied. Inside, my thoughts were loud and sharp. I knew the earring's smooth curve and how it fit in her ear. I could see the exact place where it would sit on her lobe. She had both of them tonight. When she left for work, she said, the lie sounded insistent. I forced myself not to say anything that would sound foolish. But when she left the light on low that night and closed the bedroom door, I could not sleep. The empty velvet sat like a hollow I could not fill. Dinner that night felt like a stage. We ate at the kitchen counter with plates balanced on our knees and the TV humming faintly. Laura hummed while she buttered her bread and asked me about my day. I answered in short pieces. My voice fell away from me, like it belonged to someone who'd been interrupted mid-sentence. I watched her face while she chewed slowly. Her right ear was bare. My eyes kept drifting back to the empty lobe. I remembered the way the gold had caught the sunlight in Mark's truck. I remembered the quiet flash between the seats. It seemed impossible that she could be so calm. I asked a simple question. You okay? You seem off. She looked up and smiled like she always did when she did not want to worry me. I'm fine. Long day. She tucked a loose strand of hair behind her left ear with a practiced hand. I lied again when I said I was fine. I told myself I was protecting my son's sleep, protecting the ordinary rhythm of our life. But the lie was thin. It cracked when she laughed at something on TV, and the laugh landed wrong in my chest. I kept my eyes on her face and tried to track where the memory of the earring had moved. I wanted to ask Mark about the truck. I wanted to drive over and search his seats. The thought felt catty and dangerous. I decided instead to be small and careful. I told myself I was patient. I said to myself I would watch. My head filled with little questions that sounded stupid when spoken. Had she lost one? Had Mark found it? Had I been so blind for so long? My hands were clenched under the table. I kept watch like a man waiting for a sound in the dark. I replayed the barbecue in my head. It had been last weekend at Uncle Joe's place. Ben chased a sprinkler while Mark and I ate ribs and swapped jokes about the city. Laura and I helped clear plates while Mark offered to drive her home. I remember saying I was tired and Mark waving off my offer to drop her. He wanted to help, he said. I had trusted him. It was such a normal thing that it hurt to call it strange. Now I saw the memory like a damaged photo. The simple kindness of Mark's offer had a new shadow. I thought about how many times I'd let Mark take small parts of my life. He kept my truck fixed. He lent me a ladder. He helped put up Christmas lights. The day he drove Laura home, I had been unusually tired. I remember the soft way Laura leaned against his shoulder as they walked to his truck. My mouth tightened at the sight. Maybe it was nothing. Maybe he had found an earring on the ground and then tucked it away thinking to return it. But then why had it been in his truck, so close to the seat, like it had been put there on purpose? That night, I did not sleep well. I walked the house in the dark and opened cabinets and shut them quietly like a man looking for proof. I kept thinking that if this was all a mistake, then I had to be the one to make it right. If it wasn't, then I had to know. I do not like not knowing. I am a man who builds things. I like facts you can hammer into place. The earring floated in my thoughts like a nail I could not reach. I decided to tell someone I trusted to not laugh. I called Derek. I drove to Derek's house under the weathered oaks. We had been friends since high school, and we shared simple truths, beers, fishing, and a quiet loyalty. When I told him about the earring, I tried to make it sound small. Derek's eyes went flat and steady the way they do when he thinks something through. He did not smile. "Man," he said slowly, setting his beer down in a silence that filled the porch. "That's not something you joke about." His voice made the thing seem larger than the gold loop in my pocket. We sat on his old couch, and I showed him a photo on my phone of the exact twin earring Laura still wore in pictures. Derek listened without interrupting. He asked one or two practical questions, like where I'd found it and when Laura had last worn the pair. I answered and tried to keep calm. His silence did not comfort me. Instead, it nudged the seed of doubt like wind on a small flame. "If you're sure you should watch," he said finally. "Don't say anything yet. Find out." He sounded like a man offering a needed plan. He did not say what I felt, that I should punch something or that I should scream. He offered watchfulness, like a friend who has seen fights and knows the first rule. Don't act when you are angry. After I left Derek's, I felt a strange weight. The earring in my pocket had moved from being a thing to being a problem. I felt small and foolish and dangerous all at once. I promised myself I would not jump to conclusions. I told myself I would be fair. But I also promised I would know the truth. I started making a list in my head of small moves I could use to watch Mark without seeming like a man who had begun to distrust his brother. I did not know it then, but the list would grow long and ugly. I drove to Mark's place early the next morning. The air was cool and smelled like wet grass. I told myself I only wanted to check something, but my heart thudded so loud I thought the neighbors could hear it. Mark wasn't home. His truck sat in the driveway, quiet and still. I unlocked it with the spare key he'd given me years ago. My hands shook even though I told myself everything was fine. I scanned the seat where I had found the earring. The space was clean now. Too clean. The crumb that had been there yesterday was gone. The dust along the console was wiped smooth. I leaned closer. No earring. No shine. No trace that had ever been there. Someone had taken it. I sat in the driver's seat and stared straight ahead. That meant only two people could have known to take it. Mark or Laura. The thought sat sharp in my chest. I breathed shallow breaths as if the air had turned thinner. I checked under the seats, under the mat, even in the little tray by the cup holder. Nothing. I rested my head on the steering wheel. The emptiness in that narrow space felt like someone had erased the truth on purpose. My phone buzzed with a message from Laura. Love you. Want me to grab groceries later? The timing felt like a slap. I typed a slow reply. Sure. But inside, something cracked a little more. I locked the truck again and walked to my car like a man walking out of smoke. Every step felt heavy with the feeling that a lie was growing around me like vines. I told myself not to panic. I told myself to wait. But doubt bloomed anyway, fast and wild, filling every corner of my mind. 2 days later, I stopped pretending calm. I needed answers. I needed something real. Mark had always been proud of his truck camera mount, the one he'd never actually used. So I bought a small dash cam and set it up like a friendly improvement. For insurance, I told him casually, handing it over. He laughed and made a joke about me worrying too much. I laughed back, acting like nothing had changed. But inside, tension curled tight like a rope ready to snap. He installed it himself, whistling the whole time. He had no idea that I had already programmed it to save footage to a cloud drive only I could access. He patted my shoulder and thanked me, thinking the camera was for him. Really, it was for the truth. That night, I checked the feed. Nothing. Just Mark driving to work, eating chips, singing badly to the radio. It almost made me feel silly. Almost. But the memory of a missing earring kept me watching. On the third day, at 4:12 p.m., movement on the camera made my breath hitch. Laura walked up to Mark's truck. She looked calm, too calm. She glanced around like she always did when she thought no one was watching. Then she opened the passenger door and sat down beside him. They talked. They didn't touch it first. Then she handed him an envelope. He hugged her. But something in her eyes froze me. She didn't look like a woman in love. She looked scared. I replayed the clip again and again, leaning closer each time. Her smile didn't reach her eyes. Her hands shook. Her shoulders looked tight, like she was bracing for something she didn't want. My throat dried. What was in that envelope? Why did she look like someone carrying a heavy secret? The camera had finally given me the first real clue, but nothing about it felt simple. I sat on the edge of my bed long after midnight, replaying the footage. My heart sped up each time Laura appeared on the screen. Her calm walk, her tight smile, her shaking hands. She didn't look like someone sneaking around for romance. She looked like someone trapped. But trapped by what? I zoomed in on the envelope she gave Mark. Plain, white, thick. He tucked it into his jacket, like it mattered. Then he hugged her. I watched her face during the hug. No softness, just fear. That detail hit me the hardest. I pressed pause and stared at her frozen face. If she was having an affair, why would she look scared? Why would she stand so still, like she didn't want to be touched, but didn't want to pull away? My chest tightened. Something about the scene felt wrong in a way that didn't match cheating. I opened the cloud folder again. At the end of the clip, after she stepped out of the truck, Laura wiped her face with the back of her hand. Not a romantic gesture. Not a secret smile. It looked like she wiped a tear. I felt a strange mixture of anger and dread. Maybe she wasn't betraying me with love. Maybe she was being pressured or blackmailed. The thought chilled me deeper than the idea of cheating. I tried to shake it off, but her fearful eyes kept flashing in my mind. I decided then to go deeper. I wasn't going to accuse her. Not yet. I needed more than a frightened look. I needed proof that explained everything. Something told me the truth would be bigger than one missing earring. So I did the thing I swore I'd never do. I checked our business accounts. Just to see. Just to be sure. The next morning, I called our accountant, acting like it was a normal check-in. Just want to look over last quarter's numbers, I said, forcing an easy tone. He didn't think anything of it. He sent the files within an hour. I opened them on my laptop at the dining table, the same spot where Laura and I paid bills together for years. At first, everything looked normal. Business expenses, supply orders, payroll. Then I saw it, small loan transfers. One here, one there, then more. All approved by Mark. My stomach tightened as I clicked deeper. The transfers weren't tiny mistakes. They were big, growing, suspicious. The total made me blink hard. $180,000. 3 months. $180,000 gone. Each withdrawal had Laura's electronic signature. Each one had Mark's approval code. Both of them moving money behind my back. The numbers felt like blows. 20,000, 15,000, 32,000, all stamped with names I trusted most. I pushed my chair back so fast it scraped the tile. Were they stealing from me? Were they planning something bigger? I felt sick. I paced the kitchen, trying to breathe. I wanted to call Mark and scream. I wanted to ask Laura right away, but the way she looked on the footage stopped me. She looked scared, not sneaky. So, why would her signature be on those transfers? I reopened the camera clip. The envelope, her nervous hands, her tear at the end. Money. She had given Mark money. But why? What kind of fear needed that much money? My heart hammered as a new thought took hold. One louder, darker, heavier than any before. Maybe they weren't working together. Maybe Mark was using her. The thought made my hands cold. I needed answers. I needed them now. I didn't want to go through Laura's things. I hated the idea. But the numbers burned in my head, and the missing earring pushed me forward like a hand on my back. When she left to take Ben to school, I stood in her office doorway staring at her desk. It felt wrong, like stepping into someone's diary. But something larger than guilt pushed me. I opened the top drawer. Pens, sticky notes, receipts, normal things. Then I opened the second drawer and froze. A stack of papers sat folded neatly, held together with a rubber band. I slid them out and placed them on the desk. Medical bills, procedures, tests, appointments, all for someone named Ella Blake, age 17. Blake, our last name, but we had one son, one child, Ben. My pulse sped up. I felt the world tilt. I flipped through the bills, all recent, all addressed to a small clinic 2 towns away. I checked the emergency contact line. Laura Blake, my wife. There was no father name listed. I felt my throat dry. I whispered the name aloud. Ella Blake. It felt unreal, like speaking to a ghost I never knew existed. Was she Laura's secret daughter? Was she connected to Mark somehow? Was this what the money was for? A child hidden for 17 years? I sank into Laura's office chair and stared at the bills until the numbers blurred. Each paper felt like a revelation I wasn't ready to face. My phone buzzed suddenly, making me jump. I picked it up with shaky hands. It was a number I didn't know. For a moment, I almost ignored it. But something told me to answer. Hello, I said. A small voice replied, soft and unsure. Hi, is this Adam Blake? My heart stopped. Yes, I said slowly. Who is this? A tiny breath. Then, I'm Ella. And before I could speak another word, she hung up. I stared at my phone long after Ella hung up. Her voice was young, soft, and scared. That alone told me something big was hiding under all this. I sat at Laura's desk with the medical bills spread out in front of me. My hands shook so hard I had to press them against my legs. I needed facts. Real ones. Not guesses. Not fear. So I opened the laptop again and dug deeper into our business files. I pulled up each transfer. Dates. Times. Approval logs. Signatures. Every loan showed the same pattern. Laura signed. Mark approved. Then the money moved out fast. I clicked the details button on one transfer and saw it linked to a private account number I didn't recognize. It wasn't one of ours. I copied the number and emailed our accountant. Can you check this? I typed, quietly. When he replied 20 minutes later, the message almost didn't seem real. This account is tied to payments for patient care, he wrote. Repeated payments for the same minor. The name listed is Ella Blake. I sat back and rubbed my face. So the money wasn't for vacations or gambling or anything cheap. It went to child. A sick one, maybe. Still, that didn't explain why Mark was involved. Or why Laura hid everything from me. Or why Ella sounded terrified on the phone. I pulled the earring from my pocket and set it beside the bills. Both pieces, shiny gold and soft paper, looked innocent on their own. Together, they felt like a warning. I closed my eyes and tried to breathe. One thing was clear. Something dangerous, something bigger than a simple affair, tied Laura and Mark together, and it had been moving under my feet for a long time. I whispered to myself, I need to talk to Ella again. But I had no number, no voice, nothing except the sound of her breath before she hung up. I couldn't let the mystery of Ella sit any longer. The next morning, after dropping Ben at school, I drove straight to the clinic listed on the bills. The building was small, with faded blinds and a parking lot full of cracks. I walked in, trying not to look like a man chasing ghosts. The woman at the front desk smiled politely. How can I help you? I handed her one of the bills. I'm trying to reach this patient, I said. Family matter. She studied it. You're her father? My chest tightened. I almost said yes, because something about the word felt like a hook pulling me forward. But lying wouldn't get me answers. No, I'm connected to her family. I just need to understand what's going on. Her face changed. Cautious. Worried. I can't share patient details, she said gently. But I'm trying to help her. I pushed. She lowered her voice. Ella hasn't been in for her last appointment. She missed 2 visits. That's all I can say. My heart thudded. Missed appointments meant something was wrong. Outside, I sat in my car and looked at the bill again. At the bottom, in small print, was an address, not the clinic's. A billing address. My breath caught. It was Laura's mother's house. I hadn't been there in years. Not since Laura and her mom drifted apart. Something about that address made my skin prickle. I drove there without thinking. The yard was overgrown, fence leaning like tired bones. I knocked. No answer. But a neighbor watering her plants called out, She's at the hospital. Cancer. My stomach dropped. Cancer. Time running out. Secrets close to dying lips. I thanked her and sat in my car, gripping the steering wheel. If Laura had a major part of her life, her mother would know. And if her mother knew, she might be the only person who could finally tell me the truth. I headed for the hospital, feeling the first heavy twist of dread. The hospital room smelled like bleach and wilted flowers. Laura's mother, Helen, lay curled in the bed, thin as paper, her hair faded to soft gray. I hadn't seen her in years, and the sight tugged something in my chest I didn't expect. She looked up slowly when I entered. Her eyes widened, not with fear, but with recognition. Adam, she whispered, voice raspy. I knew you would come. I pulled a chair close. I need answers, I said quietly. About Ella, about Laura. I don't know what's happening, and I think it's bigger than me. Helen smiled sadly, as if she had been waiting for this moment. Her hands trembled as she reached to open a small drawer beside her bed. She pulled out a thin envelope, yellowed at the edges. She never told you. I'd begged her to, but she wouldn't. She didn't want you to carry her shame. My stomach tightened. I took the envelope with careful fingers. Inside was a letter, written in Laura's handwriting, but older, shaky, uneven. As I unfolded it, Helen closed her eyes. Before you read, she said softly, understand this. Your wife is not cruel. She is broken, and she has been broken since she was a teenager. The letter started with 4 words that knocked the breath from my lungs. Ella is my daughter. I froze. My pulse pounded as I read. She is also my sister. My head spun. The words blurred. I blinked hard and read again. My father hurt me. Everything in my body went still. Helen watched me with quiet pain. Richard was powerful and violent. Laura was only a child. Ella was a result. I pressed a hand to my forehead. I felt sick. I felt furious. And I suddenly understood Laura's fear. Her secrecy. Her trembling voice. The money. The glances over her shoulder. This wasn't betrayal. This was survival. And I had mistaken her wounds for lies. I sat in the hospital hallway with the letter open on my lap. The lights above buzzed softly. My breath came in shaky pulls. Every line of Laura's confession burned through my chest. She had been carrying this weight alone. Through our marriage, through raising Ben, through every quiet night I thought was peaceful. She wasn't hiding an affair. She was hiding trauma, so deep it bent her whole life around it. But that didn't explain the money, or why she looked scared with Mark. I needed the last pieces. I knocked lightly and stepped back into Helen's room. Why was Mark involved? I asked softly. I need to know. Helen's eyes softened. Mark found out by accident. Years ago, before Ben was born. Laura panicked. She thought he would tell you and break your trust. But instead, he helped. My breath hitched. Helped how? He paid for appointments. He drove her when she couldn't face doctors alone. He promised not to tell unless she allowed it. But when Ella turned 10, the medical bills grew. Laura didn't want you to know because she thought you'd look at her differently. A tear slid down my cheek before I could stop it. So, why hide it from me? I whispered. Helen sighed, voice shaking. She was ashamed. Adam, even though none of it was her fault. I nodded slowly. The pieces swirled like a storm, but they were finally landing in place. Then I asked the question that scared me most. What about the earring in Mark's truck? Helen's face tightened. She dropped it when she had a panic attack. Mark picked it up. She begged him not to tell you anything until she was ready. I sat back, feeling my world twist again. So the earring wasn't proof of cheating. It was proof of fear, and all my anger had been pointed at the wrong people. When I reached home, the house felt like an echo of everything I didn't know about my own life. I walked into the kitchen, letters still in my pocket. The chairs, the photos, the mugs on the counter, they all looked the same, but nothing felt the same. My heartbeat pounded in my ears. I had to talk to her. I had to hear her say the words herself. Laura came in from picking up Ben. Her hair pulled back, her cheeks flushed. She smiled gently at me. Hey, you okay? You look pale. I couldn't pretend anymore. I pulled the letter from my pocket and placed it on the table. Her smile dropped the second she saw it. Color drained from her face. Her knees seemed to weaken. Where did you get that? She whispered. Your mother, I said softly. She told me everything. Laura covered her mouth as tears filled her eyes. Adam, I told you that you didn't want to know. But I needed to, I said. She sank into a chair, shoulders shaking. I sat across from her, my hands open, my voice steady even though my heart trembled. Who is Ella to you? I asked. She swallowed hard. She's my daughter, she whispered, and my sister. Even knowing it already, hearing her say it broke something inside me. For 17 years? I asked. Laura nodded. I thought if you knew, you would see me as dirty, or broken, or ruined. I couldn't lose you. Not after everything. My eyes stung. Why didn't you trust me? She lifted her head, tears streaking her cheeks. Because I didn't trust myself. I reached for her hand, but she pulled away, curling into herself like she was still that frightened girl. Adam, I am so sorry, she whispered. I never meant to hurt you. I just didn't know how to stop hurting myself. Her voice cracked, and the pain in it cut straight through me. I realized that the truth had shattered both of us. But we were only at the beginning of the break. I stood up from the table because my body felt too tight to stay seated. My hands curled into fists without me thinking. I wasn't angry at Ella. I wasn't angry at the bills. I wasn't angry at the years spent in the dark. I was angry that Laura had carried this alone and never trusted me enough to share the weight. I turned toward the hallway and punched the wall. The picture of our wedding, a happy photo of us smiling under summer trees, fell and shattered on the floor. Glass scattered everywhere. Laura jumped at the sound, covering her ears like a scared child. It hurt to see her like that. It hurt more to know I'd added to her fear. You married me knowing all this? I asked. My voice sounded hollow. You lived with me, slept beside me, raised our son, and you never said one word. She wiped her tears. I was scared. You should have been, I whispered. My voice surprised even me. It wasn't a threat. It was sadness sharpened into something thin and dangerous. Not of me, of losing everything we could fix together. She shook her head. You don't understand. My father, The things he did, they formed who I became. I learned to survive by hiding. That earring, I said, almost choking on the words. Finding it almost destroyed me. I dropped it when I had a panic attack in Mark's truck. She said quickly, I wasn't cheating. I swear, I couldn't breathe. And Mark knew how to calm me down. The words cut deep anyway. I turned away from her. I need space. Laura reached out, but stopped herself. Adam, please. I walked out without answering. My heart wasn't ready. My mind wasn't steady. The truth had filled the house like smoke, and I couldn't breathe inside it anymore. The next morning, I drove straight to the construction site where Mark worked. The crane stood tall in the sky, and the smell of dust hung thick in the air. My boots crunched over gravel as I searched for him. When he finally walked out from behind a stack of lumber, he wiped sweat from his forehead and smiled like nothing was wrong. Hey, man, he said, didn't expect you. I didn't waste time. You and Laura, I said sharply. How could you? The smile faded. His shoulders slumped a little, as if he'd been waiting for this. You found out? He asked quietly. The lack of denial made my blood rush hot. So it's true, I whispered. He sighed. Adam, it wasn't what you think. It never is, I snapped. You were in it together. The money, the secrets, the truck, the earring. He closed his eyes. I knew she should have told you. I stepped closer. For 17 years? You both lied to me for 17 years. Mark opened his eyes and his voice steadied. I wasn't lying. I was protecting her. From me? I barked. No. From herself? He said gently. And from the truth, she wasn't ready to speak. My hands shook. I didn't want calm answers. I wanted anger. I wanted someone to blame. But Mark didn't flinch. He didn't argue. How long have you known? I asked. Since before your wedding, he admitted. The ground beneath me felt like it tilted. Before the wedding. Before our vows. Before the house. Before Ben. My chest tightened. Mark stepped closer. Adam, let me explain. But I couldn't hear anything. All I saw was the weight of years pressing down on me. I turned and walked away, leaving him standing in the dust. I wasn't sure which hurt more, that he knew, or that he carried the truth better than I ever could. I didn't want to hear Mark's voice again, but my mind kept replaying his words. It wasn't what you think. They echoed like footsteps in a long hallway. That night, after staring at the ceiling for hours, I drove to meet him again, this time by choice, not rage. He sat on the tailgate of his truck, waiting. The streetlight above us flickered, making his face jump between shadow and light. I stood there with my arms crossed. Talk, I said. My voice was cold but steady. He took a breath. It wasn't an affair, he began. It happened before you. Laura was 18. I was 19. She didn't tell anyone at first. When she learned she was pregnant, she came to me because she didn't know what to do. I wanted to tell you later, but she begged me not to. Why? I asked. Because she knew you loved Big, he said softly. She thought you would leave her if you knew she came from something ugly. My chest tightened. So you've both been lying for 17 years? He nodded slowly. To protect Ella. To protect you. To protect Laura's sanity. I looked away because the mix of pain and understanding was too much. And the money? She couldn't afford the medical bills. I helped sign transfers because she didn't want her name tied to anything that led back to her father. She was terrified his old business partners would look for her. I felt the world tilt again, but this time in a different way. Not betrayal, but horror at what she'd endured. Mark's voice cracked. Adam, she never loved me. Not like that. She only trusted me with the part of her life she was too scared to share with you. I swallowed hard. I hated that it made sense. I hated even more that the truth hurt deeper than the lie ever could. I drove home in silence, the night pressing against the windows. My thoughts spun like loose wheels. Everything looked different now. Mark's honesty, Laura's fear, Ella's voice. When I parked, I didn't go inside right away. I sat in the driveway staring at the front door, the place I once felt safest. Inside, Ben's drawings covered the fridge, Happy scribbles of our family. Me, Laura, Ben. But one drawing caught my eye. A picture he made last year, a stick figure boy labeled Ben Mark Blake. I stared at the middle name. Mark. My breath hitched. Laura had chosen that name. It sounds strong, she'd said back then. Mark is a good man. I thought she meant it kindly. Now I understood there was more behind it. Shared history, shared pain, shared responsibility. She used my name. I murmured to myself. She gave our son Mark's name. The room tilted. It felt like everything about my family had been shared with my brother without my knowledge. My wife's secret, his silent support, their child, my child, the truth tangled into knots I couldn't pull free. I sank onto the couch and held my head in my hands. I wasn't angry anymore. I was hollow, empty, like someone had scooped the inside of my life out and left the shell behind. Laura came down the hall quietly. Adam, she whispered. I couldn't look at her. Not yet. You named our son after him, I said. She froze. I wasn't thinking about him, she whispered. I was thinking about safety, strength, someone steady, someone who wasn't me. I asked. She covered her mouth, tears spilling again. Please don't twist it. I loved you. I still do. Loved. Past tense or present. I couldn't tell. I stood slowly. I need distance, I said, before the truth breaks me again. And I walked out. The hotel room was small, quiet, and cold. The kind of place where time feels slower. I set my bag down on the carpet and sat on the edge of the bed. My body felt heavy. My mind felt numb. The soft hum of the air conditioner filled the silence. For the first time in years, I was alone with nothing but my thoughts. Laura called that first night. I let it ring. I wasn't ready. The next night, she called again. Then again. Each time, her messages grew softer, shakier. Please come home. Can we talk? Adam, I'm scared. Please don't give up on us. I deleted the messages but heard every word anyway. I stared at the ceiling and tried to picture the woman I married, the one who laughed easily, danced in the kitchen, and held my hand during storms. But now all I could see was the frightened girl in the hospital letter, the one who never healed, the one who built a life with me on top of secrets she hoped would stay buried. On the fourth night, my phone buzzed again. But this time, it wasn't Laura. It was a number I didn't recognize. My heart kicked. I answered. Hello. A quiet voice said, Adam, it's Ella. I sat up straight. Ella, are you okay? She hesitated. Mom said you're angry. Don't be mad at Mark. Be mad at her father. I froze. Her father? He's not Mark, she whispered. Before I could ask another question, the line went dead. I stared at my phone, pulse thundering. That one sentence turned everything upside down again. If Mark wasn't the father, then who was? And why was Ella warning me? I didn't sleep after Ella's call. Her last words kept echoing through my mind. Be mad at her father. He's not Mark. That sentence sat like a stone in my chest. If Mark wasn't the father, then the truth was darker. I paced the hotel room until sunrise, unable to sit still. I needed answers, real not guesses, not half-truths. So I drove home early, long before Laura woke up. I sat in my truck outside the house and searched my phone for any clue. Old records, photos, any. Then I remembered something I hadn't looked at in years. Newspaper archives. I typed in the name from the medical bills. Richard Hale, Laura's father. The search hit fast. Richard Hale, local developer dies amid scandal. Police investigate reports of abuse at Hale Properties. Multiple employees file claims. Case closes after sudden death. My throat tightened. Abuse, scandal, threats, power, all connected to him. And all connected to Laura. I scrolled further and felt my heart sink. The timeline matched perfectly. 18 years ago, Ella's age, police had questioned Richard about claims of misconduct. The article didn't give details, but now I didn't need them. I knew Laura had been a victim, and Ella had been the proof. I closed my eyes and rubbed my face hard. This was bigger than cheating, bigger than money. This was the kind of pain that could ruin a life. No wonder Laura hid everything. But then another thought hit me. If Richard had been that powerful before his death, what happened after? Who took over? Who did Laura fear? I scrolled deeper into the archives, my fingers shaking. Then I saw it. Hale's estate transferred to legal trustees following multiple sealed agreements. Something about that word, sealed, made my stomach twist. I knew then that Laura was hiding from more than memories. She was hiding from people who might still be watching. And before I could breathe, my phone buzzed again. Ella. This time she didn't hang up. I answered fast. Ella, are you okay? Her breath trembled through the line. I shouldn't be calling, she whispered. But you need to know the truth before something bad happens. My skin pricked. What truth? I grew up hearing Mom cry, she said. About Richard, about what he did. She told me not to tell anyone, not even you. She said it would bring danger. My fingers tightened around the phone. Danger from who? His friends, his business partners. They didn't want the world to know what he did. They paid people to stay quiet. They paid Mom too. I swallowed hard. Paid her? To keep my birth a secret, Ella said softly. She didn't use the money for herself. She used it to keep me safe. But when the money stopped years ago, she got scared again. She thought if anyone found out who I was, those men would come after her. Or you, or Ben. My breath stilled. The room felt smaller. Is someone after her now? Ella paused. Mom said she was being watched. She said someone from Hale's old circle was checking on her again. She said she needed to leave before they found out she told anyone. The line crackled. Her voice dropped to a whisper. She didn't run from you, Adam. She ran because she thought you'd get hurt. I sank onto the bed. My anger, my confusion, my fear, they all twisted into something heavy and sickening. Ella, I said gently, where's she now? A shaky breath. I can't say. She made me promise. Please, I whispered. I need to find her. Silence. Then she said the words that broke me open. She said you'd come looking. She said if you ever saw the truth, you'd try to fix everything, even her mistakes. The call ended. I stared at the phone, heart pounding. The truth wasn't just painful now. It was dangerous. And I was already too deep to turn back. I drove straight to the hospital again because I needed the last missing piece. The one person who knew everything from the start. Helen. When I reached her room, she was sitting up, breathing carefully as if every inhale hurt. She looked at me with tired eyes. You saw the articles, she said softly. I knew you would. I sat down beside her bed. I need to know the whole truth, not pieces, not hints, everything. She nodded. Her hands trembled as she reached for the drawer again. This time she pulled out a thicker envelope. This is a letter Laura wrote when she was 19. Helen whispered. She asked me to destroy it. I never did. I opened it carefully. The handwriting was younger, shakier. I read slowly. Mom, I can't keep this secret forever. Ella deserves better than a life made from pain. But I don't know how to protect her. I don't know how to protect myself. My throat tightened. The next line stopped my breath. Richard threatened me. He said if I told anyone, he would ruin every person I loved. I believe him. I still do. I can't let anyone else get hurt. I looked up. Helen's eyes filled with tears. She was terrified, Adam. She hit Ella not because she didn't trust you, but because she didn't trust the world her father came from. When she married you, she wanted a clean start. My heart cracked. But the money, the transfers, they were for Ella's treatments, Helen said gently. She has a heart condition, and she didn't want you wrapped in anything tied to Richard's name. Mark helped because he knew what Richard was capable of. I pressed my palms to my eyes. Why didn't she tell me? Helen laid her hand over mine. Because she wanted to be someone pure in your eyes. Not damaged. Not broken. My chest tightened until I could barely breathe. Where is she now? I whispered. Helen looked away. She didn't tell me. But I saw something in her eyes. A lie. A soft one. A protective one. Before I could push, her nurse stepped in. I left the hospital knowing one thing. Laura wasn't just running. She was hiding from ghosts that still had living hands. And now I needed to bring them into the light. I drove without a map, just instinct and fear guiding the steering wheel. My thoughts spiraled. Laura wasn't the villain in my story anymore. She was the wounded center, the one who had been protecting everyone but herself. But the more I understood, the more guilt clawed at my chest. I had accused her, pushed her, walked away from her when she needed me most. I had broken what little strength she had left, and now she was gone. I stopped at a red light, gripping the wheel hard. The city around me blurred. My heart pounded with one thought. I have to find her. But how? Ella wouldn't talk. Helen wouldn't reveal anything. And Laura had vanished without leaving a trail. But then I remembered something, the camera footage, the envelope she gave Mark. What if it wasn't just money? What if it was information? A clue? A message she wanted him to have? I pulled into a parking lot and replayed the video again. Laura's hands were shaking, her lips pressed tight. Her eyes darted around like she feared someone watching. Then I saw something I missed before. A symbol on the corner of the envelope. A tiny printed logo. A shelter logo. My breath caught. A women's shelter. That meant she was seeking help. I zoomed in until the picture blurred, but I recognized the first word of the logo. Haven. There were 3 shelters in the state with Haven in the name. 3 possible places she could be. Hope flared in my chest. I searched each location, saving them to my phone. I didn't know which one she chose, but I knew she trusted shelters more than police. More than me. More than anyone. I felt the heavy truth settle inside me. Laura didn't leave because she hated me. She left because she thought I couldn't handle her truth. And I was determined to prove her wrong. I drove home slowly, the list of shelters glowing on my phone screen. Every mile felt heavier. When I walked into the house, it felt wrong. Too still, too quiet. I checked the bedroom. Her clothes were gone. The dresser drawers half empty. Her toothbrush missing. The space where her shoes usually sat now bare. She had left fully. Completely. My chest ached. On the kitchen table sat a folded piece of paper. My name written on the front in her soft handwriting. My fingers trembled as I opened it. Adam, I told you that you didn't want to know. Now that you do, you see the darkness that shaped me. I am not someone who deserves your love or your anger. I'm just someone trying to keep you safe. Please don't look for me. Please don't break yourself trying to fix what I could not. Her words blurred as tears filled my eyes. She had run, not to escape me, but to protect me, to protect Ben, to protect Ella. And suddenly, something inside me snapped into place. This wasn't the end. This was the beginning of my fight. All my life, I've been a man who built things with my hands. Houses, fences, strong frames. Now I needed to build something else. A path back to my wife. A path through the lies her father left behind. A path through the people still hiding the truth. This was no longer just about pain. It was about justice. And I knew exactly where to start. I picked up my phone, wiped my face, and called a private investigator. Her name is Laura Blake. I said, and I need to find her before someone else does. Because for the first time since the earring, I felt clear. This wasn't a story of betrayal. This was a story of protection. And now, it was my turn to protect her. Subscribe for more stories like this, because the next chapters only get deeper and darker. The private investigator's name was Harris. He was older, gray at the temples, and talked like a man who'd seen too many secrets. We met at a diner far from town, where nobody knew my face. He listened quietly as I explained everything. Ella, the bills, Richard Hale, the seal files, Laura's note, the shelters. He didn't blink once. When I finished, he picked up his coffee and said, "You're not dealing with simple family drama. You're dealing with a cover-up that never died." His words sent a chill down my back. He asked for every detail of Laura's past. I remembered. I gave him names, family stories, addresses, anything I could recall. Then I gave him the list of shelters. He nodded slowly. If she ran, she didn't go far. She'll be somewhere she can still see you and Ben without being seen herself. That thought broke me a little. 2 days passed. No news. No calls. I stayed in the hotel, barely eating, barely sleeping. Every sound outside made me jump. I checked the shelter list every hour. I kept Laura's note under my pillow. Then, on the third morning, Harris called. "Adam, I found something." My heart kicked. He sent me a photo, a blurry security image. A woman stepping out of a car at a shelter across the state line. Her hair pulled back, her shoulders hunched, a small bag in her hand. It was Laura. I stared at the picture until the edges blurred, relief mixed with dread. If she made it there, she wasn't being hunted yet, but Harris wasn't finished. "Adam," he said, "your wife isn't hiding from you. She's hiding from people tied to her father's estate. I traced some recent activity. Someone has been following the same paper trail you discovered." My throat tightened. Meaning someone else is looking for her too. The world went still, and revenge started burning in my chest like fire. Hours later, Harris arrived with a small brown envelope. Inside was a flash drive and a missing gold earring, the same one that had started this entire nightmare. My hand shook as I picked it up. "Where did you get these?" I asked. He folded his arms. "The shelter received a package addressed to you. No return name. No address. Just your name written in a careful hand. Laura's." My heart squeezed. I plugged the flash drive into my laptop with shaking fingers. A video file loaded. Laura's face appeared on the screen, pale, tired, older somehow. Her voice trembled as she spoke. "Adam, if you're watching this, it means I couldn't stay. I'm sorry. You deserve better than secrets." I swallowed hard. "I didn't tell you because I want to be clean. I wanted you to love the version of me that wasn't touched by my father's hands or his threats. I didn't want to see pity in your eyes." She wiped her cheeks. When the money stopped, I panicked. I thought his old partners would come back. They always said they'd protect his image. They said they'd deal with me if I ever spoke. Mark helped me because he was the only one who didn't judge me. She breathed shakily. "But you always looked at me like I was whole. And I was afraid that if I told you, I'd break that." Her voice softened. "Please don't hate Mark. I know you want to, but he saved my life more times than I can count." She paused, eyes full of pain. "I don't know if I'll ever come back. Not because I don't love you, but because I do." The screen went black. I sat frozen, the earring warmed my palm. For weeks, I'd been angry at the wrong enemy. Now I wanted justice. For Laura, for Ella, for the years stolen from us. And I knew exactly where to start. With the men who thought they could still silence her. I drove straight to the storage unit where I kept old business records. Harris followed behind me. I unlocked the metal door and pulled out boxes covered in dust. Somewhere in these files were the clues I needed. Links between Laura's father, his partners, and their hidden dealings. We spent hours digging. Old contracts. Old receipts. Old letters. Most of it harmless. But then I found something else. A locked metal box I didn't remember packing. Harris handed me a crowbar. I pried it open. Inside were folders labeled with dates and company names. And one with a name that nearly stopped my heart. Hale Development Group, Confidential. I opened it. Inside were copies of old ledgers showing hush payments made to employees. Large sums marked settlement or private care. On the last page was a list titled, "High-risk individuals, monitor closely." My eyes scanned the names. Laura Hale, Helen Hale, Infant F. Infant F. Ella. I felt sick. "These men covered everything up," Harris said. "And they tracked your wife for years. Someone took over those duties after Richard died." I clenched my fists. "Someone still believes they need to protect his reputation." Harris nodded. "And someone doesn't want Laura alive to expose his crimes." My heart pounded. The footage of Laura handing Mark the envelope suddenly made sense. She was giving him documents, proof, evidence she couldn't store at home. My anger sharpened into purpose. "We take this public," I said. "Everything." Harris raised an eyebrow. You sure? Once this goes out, there's no going back. I tighten my jaw. Good. I want the world to know what he did. For years, Laura had lived with fear. Now it was their turn. Revenge didn't look like breaking things, or yelling, or chasing shadows. It looked like paperwork. Cold, ugly paperwork. The kind that destroys powerful men. Harris and I gathered every file from the storage unit. We scanned documents, organized dates, and matched numbers. It took 3 days. Day and night. I worked with focus I didn't know I had. This wasn't anger anymore. This was duty. Laura's fear had ruled her life. I was done letting it win. Harris dug deeper through legal archives. There's a trust fund tied to Hale's partners, he told me. It paid for silence. It still pays. That means someone active is maintaining it. The thought made my skin crawl. We traced payment records and soon found a familiar name, Vincent Rowe, Richard's old lawyer, the same man who handled hush agreements. Still alive, still practicing law, still protecting a dead monster's secrets. I drove to his office, my heart a drum in my ears. When he finally agreed to meet me, he smiled like a man who thought he was safe. I know everything, I told him, about Richard, about the payoffs, about the tracking. His smile cracked. I have documents, I continued, and I'm sending them to every journalist in the state. His face drained of color. You're making a mistake, he said quietly. No, I replied. Covering for a predator was a mistake. This is justice. He swallowed hard. If your wife talks, she doesn't need to. I cut in. I'll talk for her. When I left his office, Harris called. We found her. My breath caught. Where? A women's shelter. 2 hours away. She's volunteering under a new name. She thinks she's keeping you safe. I grabbed my keys. I'm coming. My revenge against her father's world had begun. Now it was time to reclaim my wife's. The shelter sat on a quiet street lined with tall trees. Soft voices drifted from inside. Kids' laughter floated through an open window. I stopped on the sidewalk, heart pounding. After all the anger, fear, lies, secrets, I was finally here. I could see Laura through the window. She sat on the floor with a group of children, reading a book. Her hair was pulled back in a loose bun, and she wore simple clothes. Nothing like the Laura who decorated our home with soft lamps and gentle colors. She looked smaller, tired, fragile, but she also looked peaceful. Peaceful in a way I hadn't seen in years. I couldn't move. I couldn't breathe. I had imagined this moment 1,000 ways. Her cry in my arms, her running to me, her angry, her relieved. But this quiet peace on her face made my legs weak. I stepped closer to the window, but my hand froze on the sill. She looked happy, safe, like she wasn't hiding anymore, not from me, not from her past. Could I walk in and break that peace? Would she run again? I stayed outside for a long time, just watching her read, watching her smile gently at a little girl who leaned against her shoulder. For the first time in weeks, I saw not the secrets, not the lies, but the wounded heart beneath them. And I realized something painful and true. She hadn't run to leave me. She had run to save me. I stepped away from the window. I didn't go inside. Not yet. I needed a plan. A gentle one. A slow one. Something that wouldn't scare her back into darkness. But watching her there, alive and safe, gave me strength. Because now I knew exactly what I was fighting for. I drove home after watching Laura at the shelter. And for the first time since everything began, I didn't feel angry. I felt steady. Clear. I knew now that forcing myself into her life again wouldn't help. She needed safety. She needed a world where her father's shadow didn't reach. And that meant I had to finish what I started with Harris. The next morning, I wrote a letter to Ella. My hands shook, not from fear, but from wanting to say the right thing. She had lived her whole life feeling like a secret. I wanted her to know she wasn't one, not to me. Ella, I wrote, you don't have to hide who you are. I'll protect you, even if I failed your mother before. You deserve a life without fear. I'm with you now. I mailed the letter and waited. A week passed. Each day felt long. I kept checking the shelter website to be sure Laura was still safe. She was. She kept reading to kids, helping women unpack bags, teaching them breathing exercises. A life built on healing, not hiding. Then, finally, an envelope arrived addressed in soft handwriting. Inside was a short note from Ella. Adam, Mom told me you would understand once you knew everything. I was angry at her for so long, but now I see she had things to protect us both. She didn't want her father's old friends hurting you. Thank you for trying to help her now. Ella, I held the paper to my chest. But there was more. A second note. Mom said something else. She said you always fix things. Please fix this. We need you. My breath caught. This was no longer just about truth. This was about saving a family that still had a chance. And I was ready. Ella's note pushed me into action. I called Harris and told him everything I had been holding back. We need to understand who exactly is after her, I said. Names, motives, everything. By late afternoon, Harris called back. His voice sounded tight. I found someone. I gripped the phone. Who? Richard Hale's last surviving partner, he said. A man named Clifton Ward. Wealthy, connected, and very invested in keeping old secrets buried. My jaw tightened. Why chase Laura now? Richard's dead. That's just it, Harris said. When Richard died, most of his crimes were sealed to protect the company. If Laura ever speaks publicly, everything crashes. Ward loses everything he built. So he's trying to scare her. Harris was quiet for a moment. He's done more than that. He's contacted old employees, checking where Laura lived, checking where she worked. He's been tracking her for months. Cold anger rose in my chest. Does he know where she is now? Not yet, Harris said, but he's close. I stood up so fast my chair scraped the floor. We need evidence that ties him to the cover-ups. Harris cleared his throat, already working on it. And Adam, you won't like what we find. That night, I sat with a folder of Hale Development Group files spread across the table. Payment logs, secret settlements, employee threats, everything Richard had done, everything Ward helped hide. This wasn't just about Laura anymore. This was about taking down a system built on abuse, a system that stole her childhood, her safety, her peace. I whispered to myself, if they wanted secrets, they picked the wrong family. My hands no longer shook. My fear had turned into purpose. And now I was ready to burn their empire down. The next morning, Harris and I drove to the old Hale estate, Richard's former home. It stood at the edge of town, hidden behind tall iron gates. The place looked abandoned, but Harris had learned that Ward still used it to store old records. When the caretaker let us inside, the air smelled of dust and stale wood. We moved room by room, searching through old cabinets and drawers. Most rooms were empty, but in Richard's old office, behind a loose panel in the wall, we found a metal safe. Help me lift this, Harris said. We carried it to the desk. Harris picked the lock like it was child's play. The safe opened with a soft click. Inside were stacks of documents. Folders marked with words like settlement agreements, confidential reports, staff threats, and worst of all, incident logs. My hands trembled as I read page after page. All the horrific things Richard had done, all the people he had hurt. And every time someone tried to speak up, Ward's signature appeared, approving payouts, silencing victims, covering crimes. Then I found a file that made my blood freeze. A full report on Laura. Pages describing her abuse in cold, clinical words. Photos, medical notes, interviews she never knew were recorded, and a handwritten note from Ward. Monitor indefinitely. High risk. Replace payments if needed. Prevent exposure. I felt sick, angry, heartbroken. Harris placed a hand on my shoulder. This is enough to take Ward down. Hard. I nodded slowly. No, this is enough to take all of them down. We boxed the files and took copies. Then we left the estate with the truth Richard tried to bury. I looked back at the crumbling house and whispered, your power ends now. Now the world would finally see what Laura had survived, and her father's empire would burn. I spent the next 2 nights sitting at my dining table with documents spread everywhere. Every page felt like a wound. Every signature felt like betrayal. But each piece also made my resolve stronger. I knew exactly what I had to do. I gathered everything. Copies of abuse logs, payouts, sealed agreements, photos, and Ward's orders, and sent them anonymously to every major journalist in the state. Not one, not two, all of them. I used a secure email and clicked send with a steady hand. The reaction exploded fast. The next morning, headlines lit up. Late developer Richard Hale, accused of abuse cover-up. Evidence points to long-term child harm hidden by business partners. New documents reveal 18 years of silence and threats. Every news channel talked about it. Ward's name appeared everywhere. Investigators reopened the old case. Lawyers demanded access to sealed files. Former employees came forward. It was a firestorm, and I had started it. I didn't feel fear. I felt justice. I felt like I was finally giving Laura a voice she never had. That night, I sat alone on the porch, looking up at the stars. My phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number. You expose him. Thank you. Ella. Another message followed. She saw the news. She cried. She said she never thought anyone would fight for her. Dad, she's proud of you. Dad. The word hit deep. I stared at the screen until my vision blurred. Everything Laura had suffered, everything she had feared, it was finally out, and the people who hurt her could never hide again. I leaned back in the chair. This was the justice she deserved. And I wasn't done yet. 2 months passed before I saw her again. The investigation spread like wildfire. Ward was arrested for conspiracy, fraud, and obstruction. More charges were coming. The entire Hale Estate team was under review. Laura's name never appeared in public records. Harris made sure of that. She remained protected. Then one quiet afternoon, as I stepped out to get the mail, a car pulled into the driveway. The door opened slowly. Laura stepped out. She looked thinner, but steady. Her eyes held sadness, but not fear. She carried no bags, just herself. We stood there staring at each other. All the pain between us seemed to float in the quiet space. I saw the news, she whispered. I nodded. My chest tightened. I did it for you. For Ella, she said softly. For all of you, I corrected. She swallowed hard. You destroyed everything they built. No, I said. They destroyed themselves. I just showed the world. She looked down. Her hands trembled slightly. I didn't expect you to fight for me. I didn't expect you to fight alone, I replied. Her eyes filled with tears. Not fear, not shame, something softer. You did what I couldn't, she said. You ended his power. I stepped closer. You deserve that. You always did. Laura's breath shook. She wiped her eyes and whispered, I don't know how to come back home. Then don't, I said gently. Come back to me instead. She looked up. Hope flickered. Not loud, not sudden, soft, careful, real. The justice was done, the revenge complete, but our healing had just begun. We sat together on a park bench near the lake. The sun made the water shine like glass. Children laughed in the distance, but between us, everything felt slow and quiet. I didn't rush her. I didn't reach for her hand. I just sat there, letting her breathe. You didn't trust me, she finally said. Her voice was soft, but it carried years of weight. You didn't tell me. I answered. My voice felt steady, even though my heart wasn't. We both stared at the water, not at each other. I thought if you knew, Laura whispered, you'd stop loving me. You'd look at me like I was dirty, broken. I never would have, I said. I was only angry because I didn't understand. She nodded slowly. And I was angry because I wanted you to somehow understand without me telling you. A painful truth hung between us. We both failed in different ways. We both hurt each other, not on purpose, just from fear. She sighed. You tore down everything Richard built. You stood up for Ella. You made sure the truth came out. I didn't think anyone would ever fight for me like that. I looked at her face, Older now, tired, but soft in the way a person becomes when they stop running. You deserve someone to fight for you, I said, and I'm sorry I didn't see your pain sooner. Her eyes glistened. She wiped them with her sleeve. We can't rebuild what we had, she whispered. There were too many lies. I know, I said, so let's build something new. This time, she didn't look away. She leaned her head gently on my shoulder, like she used to when we first dated. Not a promise, not a repair, a beginning. The next few weeks moved slow. Laura didn't come home. She still lived at the shelter, helping women pack clothes, handing out food, reading to kids. She said she needed time to breathe and rediscover herself. I respected that. But every evening we met at the same park bench. We talked about small things, Ben's school projects, Ella's new tutoring job, recipes she wanted to try someday. Nothing heavy. Nothing about the past unless she brought it up. One night she said, I spent years trying to feel clean. I hid everything because I didn't want my pain to become your burden. You were never a burden, I told her. She gave a tiny smile. I think I'm starting to believe that. Later that week, I picked her up for a meeting with Harris. He spread out papers on a table. The final results of the investigation. Warrants, charges, property seizures. Ward's empire was collapsing fast. Laura stared at the documents without blinking. I never thought the truth would come out, she whispered. It did, I said gently, and you didn't have to tell alone. She looked at me slowly. And what about us? I took a deep breath. We don't rush. We don't pretend the pain never happened. We heal. Together. She nodded. Together sounds good. The next morning, she asked me something I didn't expect. Adam, what if we did something with all this? Something good. Like what? A place where people like me can get help, she said softly. Women hiding from family pain. Children who feel lost. A place where secrets don't grow. Her eyes shone, not with fear, but purpose. We could call it Project Ella, she said. I didn't even think. Yes, I said. Let's build it. And for the first time in a long time, she smiled fully. Creating Project Ella became the first thing in months that made me feel whole again. Laura and I worked side by side, not husband and wife, but partners trying to build something that mattered. She brought gentle ideas, quiet rooms, counseling spaces, a garden where women could sit without fear. I handled the legal forms, the building plans, and the funding. Every day, I watched her grow stronger. Every day, she watched me learn what compassion really meant. We held our first meeting with volunteers in a small rented room. I stood behind her as she spoke. Her voice shook at first, but then it grew steady. I know what it feels like to hide, she told them. I know what it feels like to think no one will understand. And I know what it feels like when someone finally stands up for you. The volunteers nodded. Some wiped their eyes. I felt proud. A quiet, deep kind of proud that pulled at my chest. As the project grew, people from the community donated clothes, supplies, books, toys. They didn't know Laura's full story. No one did, but they knew she cared. They knew something strong had shaped her. One afternoon, after a long meeting, she turned to me outside the building. You're different now, she said softly. So are you. She nodded. I think we broke each other, but we're fixing ourselves. Not back to what we were, I said. No, she agreed. Forward to something better. She touched my hand lightly, not grabbing it, not claiming it, just touching. And the touch felt like trust slowly coming back to life. A trust we were rebuilding brick by brick, with every woman we helped and every story we carried. Together, the opening day of Project Ella came 6 months later. The building smelled like fresh paint and warm coffee. Soft lights glowed in the hallways. Kids' books lined the shelves. For the first time since everything happened, the place felt like a home. Not mine, not Laura's, but a home we built for others. People filled the room. Volunteers, teachers, women who had needed help, people offering support. Laura looked nervous, smoothing her shirt again and again. I put a hand on her shoulder. You ready? I asked. No, she whispered, but also yes. Before she could walk to the front, the doors opened and Mark stepped inside. For a moment, the room fell quiet. He looked older, more tired, but when he walked toward me, his face gentled. I stepped forward too. We didn't speak at first. We just looked at each other with years of love, fear, anger, and forgiveness between us. Then I hugged him. He hugged me back. No words. Just two brothers who had survived something bigger than both of them. You took care of her when I couldn't, I said quietly. You're taking care of her now, he replied. Laura joined us, tears in her eyes. She hugged Mark too, whispering something I couldn't hear. He nodded and stepped back. I looked around at the room full of people. Families, survivors, helpers. Our family stood at the center of it all. When Laura finally took the stage to speak, her voice rang clear. This is not a place of hiding. This is a place of healing. The room erupted in gentle applause. I watched her and knew we had walked through fire. But now we were building something that could outlive every scar. Years passed, and Project Ella grew bigger than we ever imagined. We opened new rooms, new programs, new partnerships. Women found safety. Children found hope. Laura found her voice. And I found a purpose I didn't know I needed. One afternoon, I walked to the main hall and saw a framed picture hanging on the wall. A gift from Ella. It showed her smiling beside Laura, both of them standing in front of the garden we planted. Sunlight danced on their faces. I reached out and touched the frame gently. That gold earring I found in Mark's car. That tiny piece of metal that once felt like a knife in my back. It wasn't proof of betrayal. It was proof of how blind I had been. Blind to Laura's fear. Blind to the truth she carried. Blind to the pain she hid so deeply. But now, standing in the place we built together, I didn't feel regret. I felt gratitude. For truth. For healing. For family, broken but rebuilt. For a future shaped not by secrets, but by strength. Laura walked up beside me and slipped her hand into mine. You still think about the past? She asked gently. Sometimes. I admitted, but it doesn't hurt like it used to. She smiled softly. That means we did something right. I looked into her eyes, clear, steady, honest. We did everything right. I said. Outside, children laughed in the garden. Inside, volunteers sorted donations. Life moved forward, full and warm. Our story had started with fear and broken trust, but it ended with something stronger than revenge. It ended with rebuilding. It ended with truth. It ended with love finally unafraid. The end. Please like, share, and subscribe. Thank you for watching.